Inspecting a render material with code. So recently in one of my videos where I showed how to access parameters and how to change them with code, someone asked a question on how this could be done programmatically, figuring out what is in a render material. And my first reaction was, you can't do that. But suddenly I realized that actually there is a way to do this. It's maybe not the most obvious to begin with, but it will make sense when we get to it. So I started here a small document where I explain that accessing parameters for an instance of a render material, like a PBR material or a paint, glass, one of those Rhino materials, you have SetParameter and GetParameter methods to do that, to access these parameters. But there's a problem with that, and that is that essentially you have a little bit of untyped access to these parameters. In the sense that, for instance, a get parameter will return an object, which actually is an RDK variant, but it doesn't really matter. But what it takes is a string, and the string is supposed to be the name of the parameter. And if you don't know what the names for the parameters, it's hard to change these because you don't know what to change. So I'm not going to show a way how you can figure out what parameter names are provided by a render material implementation using code. So I've already set up a fragment that's going to contain our code for showing what's in there. So I'm going to show essentially what parameters exist. I'm not going to write code that actually changes things around. For that you can look at other examples I've written. So this is especially about figuring out what is provided by a material. So I have already a file here with a couple of materials in. So I have an emission material, a metal material, PBR material, a paint, and as extra a custom material, one that's not provided by Rhino itself, but it's created in a different plugin that I have written. But it's a cycles diffuse type material, and it has also its own parameters. So let's look at how you can get access to those. And for that we are going to use a bit of .NET framework. But to be able to do that, we need to add a reference to the system.xml namespace, since we are going to use XML to inspect the material. So import CLR. So the common language runtime loader, and then we are going to add a reference to system.xml. And we need to do that because this namespace is not available by default. But now that we have added a reference, we can do import system.xml. Now I'm going to import it as the name XML. So I already have created a list of the render materials that are in a document. So what we are going to do is essentially loop over each rm, and that's really it for the top. So in the looping of the material, so let's see, for each material we are going to access the XML property, and this is what I realized suddenly, that the render material, or render content for that matter, exposes a .xml property, and this property contains or provides a description of the material in question in XML form, obviously. And then in this XML document we are going to look for the parameters tag. Oh. This is essentially where all the parameters of a material are expressed, and we will have a look at how that looks like. So let's start our code fragment for this. Python code fragment, loop over each rm, and let's call it also and inspect. Like so. And that's going to be, since we have now our RMS list for RM in RMS, I could have done also for RM in sc.doc.renderMaterials, but I already had this written out, so let's just use it for now. We're going to for each time we loop through this, we're creating a new document, and into that document we load the XML. On each iteration of the loop we are going to create an XML document and load the XML provided by the render material into that document. So that's going to be or maybe call it rmdoc. It's going to be an XML document, so we'll create a new one. And then we're going to do rmdoc load XML and rm.xml. So the XML property, as I mentioned, is what we are going to load. From the document, we want to find the... Oh, I already said that we are... then we can find... Then we can look for the parameters tag. So that's going to be rm params, or maybe just params. Params equals ns rmdoc dot I believe it was document dot, and then select node by name. Actually, now I have to figure out a little bit. I'm going to pause for a moment and then get back in a sec. Right, so almost there. I had it already written down, but forgot to pull it up, so it was easy to find. So document element is what we want to access first, and then we want to do select single node. And there should be only one of these per document. And it's parameters, what we're interested in. And then we're going to loop over all parameters and print. So once we have the parameters tag, now that we have this node parameters, we can iterate over its children and show the information we have learned. And this is going to be in such a way that each child node or child tag of the parameter section is going to be the name. The name of the parameter is also the name that we are interested in for the get and set parameter functions. The name of each parameter, or each child node, let's put it this way, child node is the name of the parameter we need for proper usage of the get parameter and set parameter methods. Right, so we can start by getting the first child and then continue by asking each one for each next sibling until we get none. So this is a regular pattern for XML nodes to iterate through. Let's also write down to understand what, or maybe do next paragraph after all, to understand what data type each parameter is, we ask for the type attribute. This is this tells us whether a parameter is a boolean or a string or and so on. Right, so let's now write that code. So that is going to be loop over all parameters and print. Like so, a fragment. So that's going to be actually we are going to first have child equals params.firstChild. So we are going to start with the first child and then while child. So as long as child is not none, we cannot iterate over this. So if we have a params block and parameters block that is that has nothing in it, so it's empty, this will just gracefully handle that case as well. So from this one, let me peek again a bit. So we are going to get the parameter type. So param type is a param.getAttribute node, and that's going to be type. And actually we're going to do if param type, so if we do have something, what did I do before? Or actually we're going to do it this way. So try maybe it's going to be I was going to do param type, change the type essentially. I don't really like that, but oh wait, param value. Let's maybe do this. No, param type after all. So the value of the attribute node is going to be the name or the name of the type essentially. So maybe we can add here something. No, let's do it like this. So except, so if that doesn't work, we don't have a type. We're going to do for now not available. And then we can do something like maybe at the beginning also here print. I'm going to do it a new way. So render, or just material colon and then rm.name. And here we are going to do, I would like to use a formatted string, but that doesn't exist yet for Python 2.7 and IronPython for that matter, our version. We're going to do parameter. So that's going to be a param type name is a, oh, I don't need the space there, is a param type with value, and that's going to be param dot inner XML or text. I keep forgetting. So inner XML, I guess. And then before we go back to through the loop, we need to get the next sibling. So child dot next sibling. So let's see how this works in Rhino. Right. Reload this. And let's see if this works. Oh, param is not defined. And that's because I did not call it param before, but child. Serves me right for changing names on the fly in my head. So I'm going to do here param equals param first child. And now it should work fine when I have also these fixed here. Let's go back to Rhino. And let's run this. STR has no Yes, so parent type, let me change that in here. So I'm using the wrong one here. It should be, I'm using for the parameter name, not the parameter type name. Sorry for that. And let's run that. And there you have it. We have now in our output material called PBR. We have the parameter called, for instance, the base color. It's a color with value, and then we have a string with that value. So you still have to do some parsing from the data when you want to get it from the XML. But the most important part here is this these names here. These are the ones that you want for using GetParameter and SetParameter. Let's see if we have our cycles diffuse test, and it has 4 channels. You see here in the UI it looks like 1, but it's exactly 4. So the color, and whether we have a texture on or off, and the amount of a texture in 2 different forms. So in integer form and in a double amount, and that's the amount I use for a ray traced and Rhino render to drive different vectors. So it's most often a vector from 0 to 1, which is like a percentage float form. Let's see at the gritty copper. It has a color, a bump type, which is string, polish amount is a double, and a bump scale, which is an int. So with XML, you can access the .xml property of a render material, and in theory this should also work with all the render content, so render environments and render textures. But I leave that to you to test on your own time. It should work just fine. So I'm going to put up this code on GitHub and link it also in the description down. And if you have questions, just let me know in the comments. And I hope this is useful for you. Thank you for watching.